just as the treasure was about to be unearthed. They did the one thing they were strictly forbidden to do. They stepped outside the circle. That circle, the one drawn in ash and whispered prayers, the one that was meant to protect them, the one they were told never to leave. But fear is stronger than discipline, and greed is stronger than fear. And that is where this story truly begins. The Legend of Buried Gold. In the old days, long before surveillance, before proper law enforcement, before even paved roads, kingdoms fought relentlessly. When invasions seemed inevitable, wealthy families would gather their gold, jewels, heirlooms, and coins. They would seal them in large iron containers, clay urns, or brass chests. Then they would bury them deep beneath the earth. If someone survived, they would return and reclaim it. If no one did, the treasure remained. And according to ancient folklore, it did not remain unguarded. It was said that abandoned treasure attracts beings from another realm, entities made of smokeless fire. They do not simply guard the treasure, they bind themselves to it. And once bound, the treasure no longer belongs to the living. It belongs to them. People believed that when these treasures were moved from place to place underground, the earth trembled slightly. Dogs howled. Livestock panicked. And if the chest passed beneath a house, the ground would vibrate. But no one ever dared dig. Until 1950. This story takes place before 1950, in a rural region where education was limited, technology was scarce, and belief in the unseen was absolute. A group of 6 young men heard rumors about a deserted land on the outskirts of their district, an old orchard long abandoned, a place no one cultivated anymore. It was said that before the war, a wealthy landlord had buried something there. Then he vanished. Some said he was killed. Others said he fled. But no one returned for what was buried. And that was enough to ignite greed. The one who knew the rituals, the one who understood verses, incantations, protective geometry. If they were going to dig up something guarded by the unseen, they needed him. The journey cars were rare. They rented a cart. The journey took hours. They left before sunset, but reached the abandoned land close to midnight. The moon was thin. Clouds moved slowly. The orchard stood like a graveyard of trees. No birds, no insects, no sound. Even the animals refused to step further. They tied them to a distant tree and began. Ethan walked slowly across the ground, murmuring under his breath. He stopped at a particular spot, closed his eyes, pressed his palm to the earth, then looked up. It is here. Before digging, he took ash mixed with salt and recited protective verses. He drew a perfect circle around the group, large enough to allow movement, small enough to contain them. He looked each of them in the eye. No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, no matter who calls your name, you do not leave this circle. They cannot enter, but you must not step out. They nodded, confident, brave, certain nothing would happen. They began digging. At first, it was normal. Dry soil, hard clay. Sweat dripped. Time passed. Then suddenly, the soil grew colder, damp. The shovel struck something metallic, a hollow echo. They looked at each other. Their breathing quickened. They were close. very close. And that's when the ground trembled. Slightly. Not enough to knock them down, but enough to feel. Daniel stopped digging. "Did you feel that?" Before anyone answered, lights flooded the orchard. Blinding white beams from every direction. Sirens, engines, shouting. Within seconds, the orchard was surrounded by what looked like police trucks, military vehicles, men in uniform, armed, helicopters hovering above, dust swirling violently. A loudspeaker crackled. "This land belongs to the government. Surrender immediately. Step out with your hands raised. We will count to 10. The group panicked. Lucas dropped his shovel. Jacob froze. Michael shouted, "We're finished!" The helicopters circled overhead. Wind howled. Flashlights burned into their eyes. 10, 9, 8. Ethan screamed over the noise. "Do not move! These are not real! They are not human! They cannot cross the circle!" But fear had already infected them. The breaking point. 5, 4. A loud gunshot echoed. A tree branch exploded into splinters. Michael couldn't take it anymore. He stepped outside the circle. Then Ryan followed. Jacob hesitated, then ran too. Immediately, armed officers grabbed them, forced them into military trucks. The vehicles drove off into the darkness. The helicopters followed. The treasure was gone. The earth was smooth. The hole they had dug with sweat and greed no longer existed. It was as if the land itself had swallowed the evidence. No one spoke for several minutes. Even the wind seemed afraid to move. Then Daniel whispered something that would stay with them forever. "It moved." Ethan slowly nodded. Yes. When the circle was broken, it was allowed to move. What happened outside the circle? The three who stepped outside, Michael, Ryan, and Jacob, looked like men who had returned from war. But they hadn't gone anywhere. They had only walked a few feet. Michael's hands were shaking violently. Ryan kept staring at the empty darkness. Jacob refused to look at anyone. Lucas grabbed Michael by the shoulders. "What did you see?" Michael swallowed. At first, they looked real. The uniforms, the guns, the helicopters. They were shouting. They were threatening. But when they dragged us away, he stopped breathing for a moment. When they dragged us beyond the circle, everything changed. Their hands weren't hands. They were long, too long, and cold. Their faces began to stretch. Their eyes went black. And when the truck stopped, there was no truck. There was no army. There was no road. We were standing in the same orchard, but they were surrounding us in their real form. No one dared ask what that form looked like, until Daniel did. What did they look like? Michael's lips trembled. Like smoke shaped into bodies. Like shadows that forgot how to stay on the ground. And they were laughing. Ethan closed his eyes. "I told you not to step outside." Michael snapped back. "You heard the gunshot." Ethan replied calmly. "They cannot harm you inside the circle. But once you step out, you belong to their rules." Ryan finally spoke. "They didn't harm us." They ran to the cart, but even the animals were restless. Finally, after repeated force, they began moving. The journey back felt longer than the journey there, and something followed. They couldn't see it, but they felt it. Every time the wheels rolled over a stone, it sounded like something else walking behind them, in perfect rhythm. Step, step, step. The first night. That night, none of them slept. Michael reported hearing whispers outside his window. Ryan said he felt someone sit at the edge of his bed. Jacob claimed he saw smoke forming shapes on his ceiling. Lucas had dreams of gold buried beneath his own house. And Ethan heard something else. He heard digging from beneath his floor. Within days, something changed in the three marked men. They began drawing maps, obsessively, sketching the orchard, marking new locations, arguing that the treasure had shifted. The chest didn't disappear, Ryan insisted. It moved. It wants to be found. Ethan warned them. It wants you to follow it. But why? Lucas asked. Ethan answered quietly. The soil did not collapse. It inhaled, like a mouth. And they fell. Not deep, but deep enough. The earth swallowed them waist high. They tried to scream, but the sound felt absorbed. The chest slowly began to sink, as if it were breathing. Then something rose from the pit. Not smoke, not shadow, but something solid, tall, too tall. Its body flickered between forms, sometimes human, sometimes elongated, sometimes with too many limbs. It leaned forward and spoke in a voice that was not sound. You broke the circle. You broke the rule. You belong to us. Lucas shouted, We only wanted the gold! The entity tilted its head. You wanted what was buried. Now you will be buried. Michael tried to climb out, but the soil tightened around his legs. The marks on their wrists began burning. The chest opened. Inside, there was no gold, only darkness. Deep, endless. And inside that darkness, faces. Hundreds of faces. Crying, whispering, calling. Help us. They stepped outside too. The entity extended a long finger toward Ryan. The black mark on his wrist detached from his skin. It rose like smoke and entered the chest. Ryan screamed, then went silent. His body fell backward, empty. Breathing, but empty. Then Jacob, then Michael. One by one, their marks were taken, and their eyes turned blank. Lucas was the last. He begged, I will never come back. The entity replied, You already came back. And darkness consumed him. What was found? The next morning, villagers discovered 4 men wandering near the orchard, alive but unresponsive. They did not speak. They did not blink often. They did not react to pain. Ethan visited them, and when he lifted their sleeves,